So I remember one time when we were on the Navajo reservation, we had a truck. All the elders in the Navajo reservation had a truck because it was completely dirt roads. There was no sidewalks. When you would get to somebody's house, you just drive kind of right up in their lawn. I mean, they didn't have a lawn; it was just dirt. But you just drive up right next to their house. There's no really streets or anything. In fact, when I had to renew my driver's license when I was there, and the address that I wrote down for that, 1/4 of a mile southwest of the trading post. That was my address, because there were no addresses there. And so that was a different experience, because when you got to this, when you would come into this area, and your companion would say, okay, we're going to go visit so-and-so. There was no address for that person. It was just, okay, we're going to go visit so-and-so. They live probably about 100 yards north of that big water tower. They've got a kind of a brownish house. And so if you are new and if you were going on exchanges, for instance, or you and your companion were new, you just kind of had to figure out where people were. And so it's kind of a little bit of like detective work. It was a lot of fun though. We were driving out to, because our area was a huge area. The area that my companion and I covered was it was massive. And usually we stayed in this place called Tuba City, was the city that we were in. And that's where we would contact people generally and teach people. But at the same time, we also had responsibility for the people in the outlying areas. And so we wanted to take a day to go out to one of those areas and just see who we could find. We didn't do that a whole lot because it was really far, and we only had a certain gas mileage and things like that. And so you had to kind of balance where you go and things like that. But we went out there. So we were going along the road, and then there were all these hills on the side, just kind of like dirt roads, just going every which way. And so we just picked a dirt road and kind of went out there and drove and didn't find a whole lot. We found a couple interesting things. We found like a sheep ben with like rocks and things going around it, and people were out there with their a bunch of sheep and goats and things like that. So that was kind of cool to go out and see this totally different culture and get to know them. And on the Navajo reservation, I had a lot of experiences actually on the Navajo reservation that have kind of affected where the rest of my life is going right now, because some of the experiences that I had there they have had a big effect, and they are having a big effect on what my future holds for me now and where my future is kind of going right now. So among other things, that was one way that I've been really affected by my mission, is the experiences there have completely decided where I'm going and have given me kind of the idea of where I want to go in my life. But anyways, and this is just an example. In the Navajo culture, it's much different from the normal American culture that I was used to and that I grew up with. For example, I can remember a day when we had probably 15 appointments scheduled or so, and for us that was quite a lot. That meant that in our page, in our planner, there was a name for every hour that we were going to go visit, and in some places every half hour, people that we had appointments with. And we went there, and that whole day nobody was home for any of those appointments. And I remember feeling so discouraged and just really sad by that. And couldn't figure out why nobody was taking this seriously, why nobody was home. This is so important. Why don't people want to hear this more? And for the first part of my experience on the Navajo reservation, that was kind of my perception of how things were, is people just aren't taking things seriously. They don't really care, and so on. But eventually, the Lord taught me a different view of things. And He taught me how things really are with the Navajo people. And it's really cool because He taught me this different culture. which just that knowledge alone of what it really means to have a different culture has had a huge effect on my college study, where I'm going in the future, my plans for the future, and all that type of thing. But what I learned, and this is, I don't know if this is the same in all cultures or a lot of different ones, but in the Navajo culture especially, their focus is less on appointments and the right timing. See, in our culture, or in the American culture, you show respect to someone by showing up on time and being done on time. And that's a form of respect. In the Navajo culture, it's not so much about the time you start and the time you end something, but the way you show respect is when you're with somebody, you're giving them your full attention. And so when we would have an appointment, or when we were meeting with someone, we would have their full attention, and they would be listening to us. But not necessarily would they always be there at the time we decided. And there were a lot of different things like that I learned, differences in our culture versus their culture. And that was really fascinating and really neat. And probably the neatest thing was, once I learned this difference, then I was able to pray and ask Heavenly Father to help me not only to understand their culture, but to start to think the way that they would think and do what they would do and live their cultural experience. And Paul talks about something similar. He says, when I would go to one people, I would be like them. When I would go to another people, I would do what they would do. So similar type of thing, I asked the Lord to help me kind of change my culture while I was there. And once that happened, it changed the way we did missionary work with the Navajo people. And we molded it more towards how their culture worked. And for example, we would stop setting up appointments. So we wouldn't set up times anymore, but we would drop by. We would just drop by on visits. And it's really funny because we seemed to catch people home a lot better when we would do something like that. And we would focus less on starting the lesson on time, getting it done on time. We'd focus more on having a good spiritual experience with the individuals that we were teaching. Just things like that. We would change the teaching. We would change the way we did missionary work in accordance with what worked better for them. Really neat experience. Really great experience that's helped me ever since then.